Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Hotline League. This is the episode of the week where the LCS starts officially for 2024. It's going to be an amazing episode. We got so much to talk about. As always, with me is my co-host, none other than Cubby. Cubby, how's it going?
Great. There's never been another co-host of this show in this iteration so far, right? Yeah.
Yes. I mean, it wasn't since last year that we had another co-host. But no, how you been?
Pretty good hot streak. Not bad. We had I had meetings. We had our first meeting for Challengers League today. So I got more videos than just the LCS tier list to keep me busy. I watched a show that we can talk about, later in the intro. But I wore a special shirt for our guest today, if anyone can see on the podcast.
This is another Cubby sports reference that I...
Yes. Yeah. It's Roger Goodell, who's the commissioner of the NFL. And if you couldn't see, he's got a nice clown nose right here.
Fantastic.
So, yeah. But Mark, any thoughts?
Nope. I think it's very appropriate. I appreciate it. We were talking before this about like who's good commissioners and bad commissioners, and I don't really know. All I know is vaguely the controversies that they've been a part of.
Well, we're getting ahead of ourselves because I want to introduce our guest this week, who, and I know many people don't know this, but long before Cubby was the co-host for the show, Mark, who is our guest this evening, was actually originally the co-host for Hotline League before becoming the commissioner of the LCS. So I know we have a lot of like old school people in the chat who might know this, but just for those who are unfamiliar, it's actually really crazy to have him back on the show after all this time. So Mark, how have things been during all this time since you were last co-host of the show and you got this commissioner job and all that?
It's going. I mean, we talked 4 days ago, so I don't know how much more of an update.
The interview we did, you're saying, yes.
Yeah, yes. We did an interview, a 26-minute interview, which is, good. Everyone should watch that interview. It has a lot of information in there, I think.
But the crazy thing is that tonight, it's not my questions that will be asked. It'll be a couple of Cubbies. I'm sure he'll squeeze some in. But also your questions, audience, as we open up the calls for all of you. Because I've seen some comments in my stuff that go, oh, Travis, he never talks about the stuff that it's just a shill interview or whatever. Great. Then come the fuck on the show and you ask him questions instead. That's what you get to do tonight. Anyway, shout out to Alienware for sponsoring the episode. So, Cubby, what have you been up to lately? What have you been watching? What's been going on?
Let's see. I knocked out Echo, the 5-episode burst. I know I went basic Marvel. It was.
Oh, is that out? Man, I've been I've dropped so far off of the Marvel thing. I watched Loki, but I had no idea that was even out.
Loki was good. Yeah, Echo just dropped 5 episodes, and it had some issues, but it was actually I feel kind of basic. I wasn't terrible. It had some glaring issues,
but it wasn't terrible. High praise from Cubby for cinema.
Yeah, there is some I feel like action sequences have come a long way, and they had some good one takes in there. It was well done, but it needed more than 5 episodes because I didn't really care about any characters. So.
Well, yeah. I saw Poor Things 2 days ago.
Ooh, yes. I heard it's really good.
It is really good. It is really bizarre, and I believe our guest also saw it. He mentioned this to me, and I thought it was pretty good.
Did I talk about it on Hotline League when I was last on?
I think you might have
watched it by then. Yeah.
It's very. Do not go with your family, is what I will say. I feel like it was the most. I don't want to say raunchy because raunchy is a teen comedy type thing, but I was just really. There's just a lot in that movie. I liked it though. I gave it a 4 on Letterboxd.
Someone in Twitch chat recommended Scavenger's Reign. Hot take. Watch 2 episodes of it. Overrated. Mad overrated.
Damn. Shut down.
Everyone's been talking about, oh, it's so good. It's so good.
Well, okay, so let's talk about all the stuff that has been announced in the past week. Has there been anything besides the LCS official announcements? I guess now we know Meteos is the Dive co-host that got announced today, but when Cubby and I did last week's episode, all the stuff that Mark had announced was not announced yet. So that's there. LEC has started, and I don't want to necessarily, obviously this is a very LCS centric show, but I do think the viewership and the stuff they were able to get around the new teams that have come in, I think is pretty wild. We did have the new cinematic, but I don't think on the team front we've had any updates or anything like that. So this episode will be primarily about the announcements and stuff, and we might end maybe 15 minutes early. We'll see. I know Mark has other things he wants to do, and there's not too much to talk about.
There's also the Hall of Legends was announced.
Oh, right. Hall of Legends is another thing.
So there's all the game stuff.
Yeah.
Because all the game changes came out on Wednesday last week. So anything game related, I'm sure Cubby is ready to talk about, because I don't know what's going on. I load into an ARAM and people die very quickly now. No idea what's going on.
Mark, you're enjoying being completely unplugged from the cover, the analyst seat, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, I watched a fair amount of LEC this weekend to try and begin wrapping my brain around what's going on, and I was like, this is interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I feel like they're finding new ways to monetize nationalism over in Europe. It's wild.
True.
I mean, it's good for eyeballs, apparently.
Yeah.
It is a good question, Mark. Are you is it strange to be headed into the new season and not be paying attention to meta stuff, or are you still going to be able to do that? How much is that something you're going to even think about?
A good bit. I don't think I'll be able to. I mean, I could. I don't think it's a good use of my time anymore, honestly, to deep dive patch notes. But I'll at least I read the items that are relevant. I know what they do. I know what void grubs do, and the different barons, and just by watching the broadcast, you pick that stuff up. So I'll always kind of know what's going on. But I probably won't be really coming up with my own thoughts.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, there's not too much to talk about in the sort of interview thing, because I did just interview Mark the other day, and I don't know, Cubby, if you have any questions for Mark that you want to get in here, any follow-ups or anything to the announcements or stuff that I didn't talk about in the interview, I'd love to cede you the floor.
Yeah, I was actually going through that video you did with I had 3 or 4 minutes to go still, but I was trying to get through that interview beforehand. So funnily enough, Mark and I actually chatted before the other week, so I had some questions there with how, just kind of our role with Challengers League, how we can help out. There was I think one overarching thing though that I kind of took from that might be interesting for people to hear, Mark, which was kind of the overarching you kind of hit on it in Travis's interview, what happens if we introduce the shot clock to the NBA. But I'm kind of interested, at least where you're at in terms of pitching players to fans too, because I feel you had a different analogy for that, but also we talked a little bit about how can we help players get bolstered up, and how can fans attach the new ones, and maybe you can go into that a little bit with some of the new and returning players, ways that you feel the LCS was good at getting fans to latch onto those folks in the past, but also where you kind of want to push that moving forward.
I think if people miss the analogy that you're referencing, it's I've talked a couple times briefly about we're still in the first 12 years of League of Legends, which is a long time in gaming world, but in sport world, that's pretty small. And if you look at a lot of sports, a lot of times they had pretty substantial rule changes that at some point made it a lot more enjoyable of a viewing experience for fans as they ironed out rules. And the good example of one is the shot clock, which didn't exist in the early days of the NBA and led to some horrible gameplay with how people approach things and yada, yada, yada. And so eventually one coach basically pushed this through. It happened. They introduced the shot clock, and if anything made the NBA successful, it was this. This is probably the one thing. There's also a lot of stuff about like back in the day, sports broadcast didn't have the scoreboard. Like there wasn't a scoreboard. they would show the scoreboard sometimes with a camera, but they didn't have like a graphical overlay. And so there's like, when you think about that to League of Legends, I think it's a more modern era and whatnot. But there's probably a lot of things that like you wonder about 5-10 years from now if we're going to be like, oh yeah, remember when they didn't do this in draft or when they did these sorts of things. So it's just like a big picture idea of like challenging convention, even if it might be temporarily uncomfortable. And to the point about like how our pros feel about it, they are like very willing to join in with this kind of like experimental phase. I think they have concerns, and you know, I had a big conversation with them. The Players Association was on site doing some other stuff, and I popped my head in for 20-30 minutes to be able to just field some questions that they had. And of course, there's, you know, like what happens with this bug, what happens with that, and you know, just trying to be available to answer their questions as much as possible and make the whole ecosystem feel like they're a part of exploring the future space of the LCS and all the potential changes you can make. On the topic of getting them to attach fans to players, I think we definitely, with the live patch, have a good direction to point a lot of our content where we might be world first Smolder or world's first this, or just like tips for climbing in solo queue. We're the only pros playing on that one, you know, and being able to build our content and give the players a platform to put their personalities and stories out there themselves, more than in a different way than just like trying to tell their story immediately. So I think if you can get fans attached to General Sniper or something because he's playing cool stuff in the LCS, that's a lot easier way to, I think, make people interested in General Sniper than, or I shouldn't say easier, but it's a more natural way, I think, for a lot of people to get attached to some pros. So that's kind of where we're thinking with some of that stuff, is like it's a more, especially to newer fans, and since we lost Doublelift and Bjergsen and all these big names, you know, like how do you attach fans to people? And I think through the game is a good mechanism.
So, Cubby, I know you've already pulled some folks into the waiting room, but do you want to do the spiel for folks who are not in there yet and are interested in coming on?
Yes, I must ace the test. You know, I got the two dads here to make sure we're good to go. Guys, if you want to call into the show, you can check it out by typing in !Discord. That will give you the Discord, the Travis's channel. You guys can join that. At Cubby in the Discord in either pleb chat or sub chat, depending on where you're at. If I like your take, I'll throw you in waiting room. I'll usually tell you where you are at in the life cycle. I've pulled takes for, I would say, about half the show. So we got to make up, or I guess find some more takes. And then hang out. I'll drag you down the waiting room. We'll check your mic, and then you can come on and talk with the commissioner of LCS in Mark. And, you know.
And if you are a sub, I would just, first off, thank you. I logged in today to find out that I think I ended the year with 1,000 subs. I think we're below 500. We were at like 450 then. I think it's just because I didn't stream for 2 weeks during the holidays, and that is the streamer conundrum. You know, take time off, just lose all your subs problem. So first off, thank you to everybody who is subbing. If you're listening to me in VOD or podcast, maybe consider loading up twitch.tv/TravisGaffer and tossing a Prime sub if you have it. But that stuff is just very helpful in terms of keeping the show in a good spot. Also, when you do become a sub, one of the cool things is you can sync it with Discord, so you can get access to the subtopics channel, which moves a little slower. And obviously, Cubby will be looking at both of those, but sometimes it's just, we try to pull from both. So you can take a look at both of those, and we'll see how things go. But yeah, without further ado, Cubby, do you want to go grab the first caller?
I can go grab the first caller. All right.
Let's do it. Thank you to, by the way, everybody who subbed. I shouted out a bunch of you earlier, but for the last 20 minutes, we got Subcheck, Guest Monster, Moonfish, Darking for 71 months, my gosh, Smash Ica, Stizzleswick, Perchy, Lord Audie, the one and only Corbin, The Noblet, Snappy Frog, Tamain just gifted 2 subs, Yellowbot, Alark, and Parthos. So thank you to everybody for those. And I see Swadfather and Steve McGooch. Thank you for your subs. Really appreciate everybody. The Twitch chat just popping off right now. It's very, very nice. We should have. Oh yeah, here we go. Franz is here. Franz, where are you calling from?
Hey, calling from Huntington Beach, California.
Huntington Beach. You were on at some point in time last year, I recall, because we've talked about Huntington Beach, I think.
Yeah.
What do you want to talk about on the show?
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys watched KC versus Mad today in the LEC, but it was pretty sweet. My question for Mark, if you watched it, is how can teams match the energy we saw in that game in North America?
So let's assume nobody saw the game or they don't understand what you're talking
yeah.
about. Can you elaborate for those people who don't follow Koi and Carmine Corp and all that stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So KC just got into the LEC. They are a French organization, and Mad Lions merged with KOI, I believe, which is I don't know if I'll pronounce this right. Ibai. He's a big streamer in Spain, and so it was a big Spain versus France sort of grudge match. There's a big rivalry there, and so the studio was filled with like crazy passionate fans, basically chanting and singing the entire game. Just a week one regular season game, going back and forth, making signs at each other. At the end of the game, spoiler alert for the result, Mad Lions won and KC ended the week 0-3, and so the fans were chanting 0-3. It was great. It was just very passionate fandom, in what I would say mirrors the sort of fandom we see in T-sports, more traditional take on fandom.
Yeah, and I think I saw somewhere, was it on Reddit or Twitter, that it was it broke a record for highest viewed regular season match in LEC. I think Sheep Esports like tweeted about that. So obviously a huge deal. So Mark, what do you think whenever you see this type of stuff?
I think one, it's really cool. I have not watched this particular match, but I did watch day 1 and day 2 of LEC. And even before, the KC fans and the Mad Lion fans were pretty vocal. So I've been watching that, been watching the Twitter drama around KC as well, with seeing what my boy Artem, the LEC commissioner, was getting on Twitter a little bit. Just so I'm trying to keep my finger on the pulse of LEC a little bit more. Like, generally speaking, when I was previously analyst and content creator and all this stuff for NA, I didn't actually watch VCT very much. I didn't watch LEC very much, except like in the mornings before we did our show and things. So I'm trying to be more tuned in to what's going on in the broader ecosystem of esports. So I did see all that. I think it's really cool. I like the passion. I like the viewership. I wish we had that. And I think it's a fair question to say, how do we get there? Ender in chat said something where he said, I literally don't know if NA can do that. And I think it's true that like they're tapping into something bigger than esports a little bit with the Spain versus French rivalry. These are like things that exist in other like sports, and you can kind of leverage that. And we don't really have that in North America. That's like a very clear, obvious one. West Coast versus East Coast, someone in chat mentioned as well. I think that's maybe the closest thing that would be like endemic to our demographics. And I think you could even like, if you wanted to, like lean in with the ping thing a little bit or something. But the other thing is that for them, this is like kind of multiple years coming, and I could be wrong, but like the ERLs have been building up a long time, and like the Spanish league was successful, the French league was successful, the LFL was popping off, and like they then tapped them now, and now it's like made it into the LEC. So like even if North America could do like an East Coast West Coast thing, or like find a thing like that to tap into, it would take years to build. Like I don't think you can brute force it, and that's what makes this so engaging, is that it's not just like they randomly decided to like do this. It was something that happened in their scene from how they set it up with the ERLs and whatnot. Like if you were going to try and mirror this, you would actually probably want to set up an East Coast NACL league and a West Coast NACL league or something. Like I don't know how you would do something like that or whatever, but like it would probably be like having to start at that level and give it a couple of years to cook or something. Like you can't just do it overnight.
David Shynock in the chat says, "Can we at least get regional watch parties?"
You're actually asking me that?
Sure. Yes. Why not?
Sure. Yeah. I think so. I don't want to commit to anything right now on a Monday at 7:30 on my day off. But I think finding out ways to activate for different regional fandoms and stuff like that is something that's on our radar this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's also crazy. Like, I've seen like KOI was, I believe, partnered with Rogue last year, and then they swapped to Mad, and like there was like all the off-season drama of like, oh, I'm not Spanish, I can't be on the team, right? And they let go of
Yeah.
like Miski and what was it, Mac too, like the coach, and so I mean, it's actually pretty wild the fact that France lost again, which is good for K Corp. Anyway, but yeah, I think it's like, I mean, this is something like I talked a lot about with Tier 2 because like as you kind of said, Mark, like it was like years in the making. People would always be like, hey, like why does Academy at the time not have like the viewership that regional leagues have over in EU? And I think a lot of that was the fact that like native language broadcasts are big. Like the fact that the LEC broadcast was in English, like if you like a lot of people over in Europe, the vast majority do speak English, but a lot of them speak multiple languages, and English is not everyone's native language. So having a French broadcast for a French league ended up being like really powerful for building up that system that was years in the making, right? I think that like one way to do it, like I mean, NA is trying to do it with like creator tournaments. I mean, we just had Ludwig versus Tarek coming in. I think one of the biggest concerns that I have from Valorant and even from a broadcaster myself that works with Riot is the fact that Tarek's co-streams have more views than the main Valorant broadcast, and that is something that I think is like a wild evolution of how we've consumed esports, but definitely is like really concerning from my seat, like where I haven't been trying to build a following since COVID hit, and I was late to the game, and like I always wanted to be a part of the broadcast where I could try and help tell player stories through that. But now it's like co-streams that, like when you have a co-stream that's doubling up Valorant viewership, I think that's very concerning for Valorant moving forward. I think it does really show like the power of creatives and stepping into the space. So I know that like Disguise had a huge impact on Challengers League. There have been a lot of questions in Hotline League, like the chat tonight, about getting more creators in. And I think that at least like for an initial boost for NA viewership, I mean, we definitely saw that with Challengers League getting Disguised involved. And I think that the fact that A, being tied to countries, but B, having big creators come in and to LEC, I mean, you're seeing some pretty big numbers, which is great. So, yeah.
Yeah, to combo off that point, I think figuring out how to do it naturally. I haven't looked at the LEC stream breakdowns to know how much is coming from the co-streamers or not, but I think it's fair to say that like part of this huge viewership that they're getting is because they're tapping into multiple fan bases. We talked about French versus Europe, but also just the individual creators of those markets as well being able to co-stream, which I don't think in the past LEC has had co-streaming, generally speaking. Even Casual's co-streaming now, right? So like
yeah, co-streaming is definitely a newer thing for them, that's for sure.
Yeah. People are saying Ibai hit 200K, Commento at 170. I think the main stream, at least like when I briefly checked, it was usually around like 200K, like 150 to 200K. So like, regardless, like these are numbers that are rivaling the main broadcast. To that point, kind of like a similar thing's happening in Valorant.
Yep.
I think Tarek obviously is the main broadcast a little bit in that sense, in terms of just like the raw number of viewers. But like, so there's I think there's an interesting dynamic between broadcast and co-streaming, which was kind of beyond the scope of this question. Point being that like to see what LEC is doing and to just want that, I think that's an aspirational goal and really cool. I think how you get there is different in North America and maybe a little bit more challenging because you don't have this like fractured viewership thing that the ERLs was tapping into in North America. There's no reason that a NACL fan can't just watch the LCS. Like those are both things that appeal to that market. There's nothing that separates the two as it stands right now.
I think it would be really fun. I'm just like thinking through, imagine if 3 years from now you had OTK versus offline in LCS even, right? Like it's just wild to think about what those numbers would be like, and you can imagine the beef that would start between certain people with asthma and disguised toast all, shit talking each other and all that stuff, I feel like it would just build up so much and really bring LCS to kind of the forefront of Twitch in a way that it used to be, I think.
We just need like a bunch of people, like when it came out, when they wanted the Drive to Survive for LCS, Ender just kind of said it in the chat. We just need, a format where all the GMs and the team leads can beef with each other behind the scenes. And then we got it. That's all we need.
Yeah.
I will say also, just on like the OTK and offline TV stuff, it is really cool. But it's worth noting that a lot of the creators in these specific markets are also like unbelievably far ahead in those respective markets, as far as I understand it. Like, also same with Biano and CBLOL. Like, these people are huge, like absolutely massive. I could be wrong. I'd have to check what their concurrents are right now, but I think like they are very notable in their size compared to like, like they're just next level.
They're a lot bigger streamers, you're saying, on an individual basis.
But I'm saying like they like within like their like, I don't know how to phrase this because I haven't had this conversation before, but like within terms of like market share and like influence over it, like there's a lot of influencers in North America and you might identify with one or the other or the other or the other. Whereas it feels like, and again, I'm not native to these audiences, but like it feels like the ones who sit at the top of these markets, it's like that's the person. Like that is like their Mr. Beast. That is like the person. And like I could be wrong, but like that's also seems to be like a noteworthy thing to me.
Yeah, I do wonder if you get it in the aggregate though. Like if you took all of OTK together, and I'm not saying that you'd have all those guys watching every game or whatever the way Abai does, but I do wonder, what your potential total audience is whenever you combine all that stuff. So, Franz, thank you so much. Is there any kind of follow up here? I know we kind of took your stuff and ran with it.
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah, I agree. I don't want to act like I have a great solution for that because obviously it's way harder in NA because it's very regional in Europe and it's much harder to do that with everyone based out of Los Angeles. So I get that. I just think the sort of, we've seen this new sort of like K-pop style fandom come into North America, and I just think in order for sustainable fandom to last, I personally would like to see more traditional fandom where people are diehard fans of their own teams and they I don't want to say hate, but they're not happy about it when rival teams or any other teams win. For example, I saw a tweet after like EG got knocked out of playoffs last year. Some fan tweeted like, "Oh, I'm happy for Team Liquid that they went to World. I'm just so sad they went to Worlds, but I'm just so sad for Evil Geniuses. I'm sad for JoJo." And I just think like in traditional sports, you'd never see anyone say, "Oh, I'm so happy for this other team that they succeeded." All they would have is major salt about their own team. I just think that's better for fandom.
Hey, you know what? As a Bears fan, I'm glad the Packers won because watching the Cowboys collapse was 10 times better than watching like the Packers lose. We got to enjoy the Cowboys collapse.
But even then, your major motivation is hatred for another team.
It is.
Like that's to Franz's point, right?
I can choose my hatred.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. No, I agree with that. Like for example, like everyone either loved or hated TSM. I was a TSM fan before they left the league, and I think I just think that kind of fandom is what we need. Again, I don't have the perfect solution, but anyway, sorry, I know this has gone on for a long time. Shout out Mark, congrats on the new job. Shout out Cubby, congrats on the co-host. Happy you guys are continuing the show. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, the only person who didn't get a new job out of all this was me. And I applied twice for that job. Mark, do you know that the narrative has now changed to like it's the cope that occurs on this stuff where, because whenever I released the video that was like why Mark will fail, and then also in the interview, so many of the comments have been, oh yeah, maybe Travis didn't technically apply, but he asked Riot to hire him and they said no. Like it's like the goalpost just keeps shifting on what my thing was. I did not ask Riot to hire me. They did not say no. I had very casual conversations with a couple friends at Riot who encouraged me to apply.
I feel like people don't know what a feeler is. Maybe like feelers are just like put a feeler out.
Hey, Mark, can I take your
temperature
seat?
checks. Yeah.
All right.
All right. Do you want to grab the next caller, Cubby?
Get me out. It didn't go well. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know if Cubby meant like take my seat, like become the commissioner. It's like literally have the seat that I'm in right now.
I think. Oh, maybe it is your job, or maybe casting. Who knows? Anyway,
I don't know.
We've got another caller here. Caller, what's your name and where are you calling from?
Hello, it's Farmerginge. I'm calling from a very cold Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
Ah, okay. Well, welcome back to the show from Canada. What do you want to talk about on the show?
I wanted to talk about previously, just after Worlds, I called in with a take about how we should get rid of the Worlds patch, and it kind of delved into a conversation that Mark and we all had about the period of patches and the pro players playing, like practicing in solo queue off of the 2 week behind live patch. And I'm interested to find out if kind of Mark's view and the status and the view of his team to go onto the live patch as something that's been in the works for a while, and also if the team's asked for it for better practice as well.
I mean, like, I know the answers to these questions. I guess I'm just weighing in my head if this is going to ruffle any feathers if I, to divulge the information.
Give us the tea.
Yeah.
No, it won't.
I mean, like, I don't think it would, but like, based on like, I think one thing to keep note of is like the timeline had to be pretty aggressive to get these in place for spring 2024. And so like a lot of people have talked about live patch separate from me, separate of any conversation I've been a part of. Like, I think everyone at some point has had the thought about the gap between the two. So like, I don't want to pretend that this was like a novel idea or anything. So, like there might've been conversations in the past with teams and previous commissioners about this, about, in other regions, other commissioners might've floated this idea. I don't know the entire ecosystem, but, and it's something that prior to me being hired, like I said, when I was talking in the interviews and stuff, I mentioned that like when I was in the application process, I was pretty straightforward with, hey, when like, these are the ideas that we would be pursuing if you bring me in. So like, I think a lot of people had insight kind of, but I don't know who all knew what. And, we didn't have a chance to sync with the teams too much prior to beginning really pursuing the ideas once I started, if that makes sense.
Cubby, what is the Challenger League? What has the Challenger League played on? Like, I have never really paid attention to what patch they're on, and
they were 2 weeks behind as well. They're on live now as well.
Given where we were in the schedule, though, when at least the year where we were on Wednesdays, we were the first patch to play, or the first league to play on the newest patch, because like that would push through on Wednesdays in the old cycle.
But it would still be the 2 week break.
Yes.
Yeah. Not break, but the
yeah. I mean, like, my understanding of this is that when talking with teams, some teams really don't like it, and other teams just shrug and say we're all playing by the same rules anyway. And then some teams are like, oh, we use the time better. Like, it's like more of an advantage. Like, we're losing a ton of data, but everyone's on the same mantle. So it just really kind of matters, like, what mindset you have or what your headspace is. I very much believe that, like, everyone's on even playing field. I think it helps some players and, like, helps some teams more than others, or hurts some others, but you can always adapt if you're good. So I'm sure that there was some teams that complain. That doesn't surprise me at all. But I think that you'll always get teams that complain when there's going to be change, especially change that they don't agree with. So the only bummer is that like there could be more bugs. And so I actually kind of feel bad for like the QA team and like the ref team that handles bugs, because they have to be a lot better at finding those and executing them. So yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting year for this change to go through, just with how big Season 14 changes were as well. I think, you saw I think it was a hot fix on Friday that came out as well. And I saw some LEC people tweeting about confusion if they were going to be playing on that hot fix or not. I don't know where it ended up landing, but there's definitely going to be some growing pains. I don't think on the LCS side we're going to pretend that like everything's going to be there'll be no problems at all. I think that's why in that video when we announced them, we asked for a little bit of patience and grace from fans as we try to get these in there and make it as smooth as possible. Same from the player and team side. Like we are listening to the feedback that they have. If things are frustrating, we'll listen to that. And at the end of the day, though, we're an entertainment product, and if fans really resonate with this change, it's about figuring out how to smooth those other parts over, assuming that they are not so bad that they're like blocking the effectively making it a worse product overall, even if fans like the changes. So that's the balancing act.
So I was on board with Mark for this change, by the way, because at least for Challengers League, like I very much looked at it through the lens of last year. I thought Disguised was the biggest thing that like moved the needle in a good direction. Like in a split where we lost 7 LCS orgs, we were able to maintain, if not improve our numbers, pretty much because we had Disguised in the league. And my idea was that Disguise brought the most new fans too, because people that are fans of Disguise would sometimes like watch his streams and they'd be like, okay, like Disguise is playing Hearthstone, and then his team's competing, so he's going to swap and watch that for a couple hours, right? And if someone is new to League and sees that game on the current patch and sees them playing new stuff and like gets to hear Disguise being like, oh, I haven't like seen this yet. Like, I think they're more likely to pick up the game than like playing a game that is like 2 patches behind or like 2 weeks behind. So I thought that it would help fans more so connect with the game that they see. So I also was for it on that basis. So yeah.
Yeah, I think this is one of the ones where I bring up that shot clock example when we talk about that, because what's funny is when that happened, there was a lot of players who were nervous about this, and there's if you read about it, they're talking about how like the players were shooting in under 8 seconds, because they felt so pressured by the clock before like a meta established within how you approach and like all.
I knew the meta early, Mark. Now it's you shoot in 8 seconds so you get more shots. They were ahead of the game.
7 seconds or less, Suns baby, part 2.
Yeah.
No, that was coming from a place of panic rather than I think offensive strategy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like there is going to be growing pains. I don't think like everyone will have their workflows on how you try out champs at the start of a week, or like all these sorts of things that might happen. I think just like understanding that is going to be part of the process of making a better product in the long term, hopefully.
Yeah.
Actually, off that, I do think that the introduction of the second phase of bans was like the closest comparison of like what the game's already had. Because I do think that changed a lot of how pick ban works and is pretty healthy for the game. So yeah, and that was something. It was a big change for us, because it also changed the first time I think how client and sport drafted differently. Like that's a tournament draft, whereas even draft mode in the game is not like that, if I'm not mistaken. So it's been forever since I played ranked, but I'm pretty sure it's not that normal. So yeah, there's always these sorts of changes that people are looking at to do.
Hey, Farmerginge, thanks so much for the call. Anything you want to shout out before we go on to the next caller?
Shout out to all you guys for keeping this going, Mark for coming back. Also just wanted to say I think this will be one of the first times I've watched the LCS live this season, and I honestly think it's just because of that. A couple of the changes that Mark said, it's got me a little bit more excited for the league again. So there you go. Thanks very much, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good one.
Cheers, you too. Bye.
See it.
All right. Let's see. Cubby, you want to go grab the next caller? I think we have time for another before we take a quick break. Thank you to, let's see, Jackal here, Don Emparn, World in Jeopardy, Zajeff, a name I haven't heard in at least a month, Slawcat, Yeshua, Vecchio, thank you for the 5 gifted. Very generous of you. Helping me rebuild my sub empire. Haru928 for the prime. Lady Empire, Risky Devils, Fisher Molson, Kensk, Demon Devi, thank you for the 1 year, and great name as always. And Kanoke, thank you everybody for the subs. We got Murderino here. Murderino, where are you calling from?
Calling from Ontario, Canada.
Ontario.
Also very cold here.
Another Canadian freezing. What do you want to talk about on the show?
Essentially, it's about the new Hall of Legends that got announced. And my take is that at this point in League, no NA player has done enough to actually qualify for being in the Hall of Legends. And I think that's going to make DL and Bjerg fans pretty mad. But I just think if they let those kinds of players in, it's kind of a really big reduction in terms of the prestige of the accolade. And I think it'll feel more like giving kind of a pittance to each region as opposed to truly being like the Hall of Legends.
When did you start watching League, competitive League?
I started 2017, 2018. I've gone back and through some of the international stuff, but not much further than that.
Yeah. I wonder how much you would feel differently if you had watched earlier, because for a long time both Doublelift and Bjerg were just like, they are some of the longest standing players, right? Like they were playing when Faker was like 14, you know? And I think the fact that they maintained for as long as they did and continued to show up at Worlds every year and had so many appearances and all that stuff, I think it is less offensive than it seems like you think it would be, right? And that is why I somewhat disagree. I mean, I don't know. Have they said how are they inducting only one player at a time, or how that's going to work? Because I think obviously it's not like they should start with Doublelift or Bjergsen or anything like that. But there's an obvious player for spot one. But I do wonder if, you know, if they were looking at like 5 players, and I realize that there's probably a lot of content creators that'd be like, oh my god. But I think there's a good chance that like Doublelift and or Bjergsen could end up on that list when you look at the entirety of their careers.
I can understand the concept on a long enough timeline, letting them in, but I think my take's focused. Like, I think they're going to let a lot of people in because they want to sell skins. If they end up giving skins to each inductee. But when you look at like the history of League, like I find it hard to prioritize Doublelift or Bjergsen over people like Worlds winners, right? Like Bengi, Faker, but even people who haven't won Worlds. Like, if you're gonna put Doublelift above like Uzi, like I struggle with that.
Yeah,
right?
I don't think
Mad
anybody would
Life,
probably put
Diamond
Doublelift
Prox
over
even.
Uzi, but I don't think it's always, you know, it doesn't have to be that exclusive in my mind. Like you can have, again, it depends on how many people they're inducting at a time, but I think there's definitely an argument to be made for Doublelift, given how wide the net is that you cast.
Yeah, I was gonna say it really depends, I think, on how quickly, like how many people are coming in a class or whatever, or how they're doing that, because it's usually considered a class is how it's called in traditional sports. And the other thing is, it's really depends on what they're voting on. Like you're kind of saying, are these like the best players ever, or are they the most influential? Are they most popular? You know, and it's gonna be like, it really depends on the criteria. And I think there's criteria where it probably wouldn't feel bad to put in a Doublelift type person.
Yeah, I pulled this one because like I think that like what it hints at is like ultimately like you don't think that these players should get in like based on criteria, and like I'm curious like what happens when someone like Udapon retires, right? Like did Udapon ever go far at Worlds on DFM? No, but Udapon has the longest tenure with a single team. Udapon has the most domestic titles of any player like in League of Legends history. Like for me, I think that deserves to be like enshrined in the Hall of Fame, right? Like hell, I think that like Dash should be in the Hall of Fame, like high key. I think like the Hall of Fame traditionally in sports, it encompasses people that have worked like in the space as well, and like I have like a very like wide net for like what this could be, but I think it's going to be really interesting to see like what kind of criteria they actually go on, right? Because
Cubby, would you put me in the Hall of Fame?
I don't know, Travis. You shill for Riot a lot. I don't know if you shill that much. You know?
Okay, that's
yeah.
It's a fair answer. That's a fair answer.
But I don't know. Like I actually think that like the Hall of Fame could be like a lot of things. Like I listened to the Cubs growing up. Like Pat Hughes has been covering the Cubs like for over 40 years. He got in the Hall of Fame. Like I think that kind of stuff should be rewarded in the space too. And I'm really curious about like what the actual ramifications or like qualifications that they're gonna have like to let people in. Also, no active players in, so no faker. And I think that the only way I'd even think about having that be an exception is if they had faker be the only active player ever inducted into the Hall of Fame. But I think they're going to induct faker before his career ends, and I think that's crap. So.
Oh, you're saying they shouldn't. You don't think anybody should be inducted if they're still playing?
Yes.
It's really awkward because you have players that will just stop for a bit, right? Like.
Yes.
I guess maybe they have to stop for like 2 years and then you induct them.
In baseball, it's 10. I want to say in most sports, it's 10. I think for this, they can do less, but still.
Hot take, that's a boomer mentality.
Oh, yeah? What do we got here?
Hot take. I think if someone is like ready, they're ready. You know, like why do we got to pretend faker's not like the first ballot? You're going to put someone in. Like my concern with this is like the first person should clearly be faker. But if you have to be retired for 3 years or something, then like, and you open this up, it's going to be other people before faker. And then it just sounds weird. Like wrong. It should be the best player the sport's ever dang seen. Build the criteria around that guy, not the other way around.
I think the other thing is if Riot is, I don't know how Hall of Fame's monetized or whatever. It feels like it's just like a fandom thing. If Riot is like, and then we make skins for these players, I feel like they're not going to want to wait a while to make these skins. They're going to be like, yo, we got to get that faker skin so that every time faker pops off, somebody pops up on Ari and gives him and plays that.
Imagine if there was a Mad Life Thresh skin in like season 5.
Gretzky had to wait, so should faker. Who cares? Who asked about the NHL? That's
yeah. What are we bringing hockey into this?
If someone said that in chat, I don't care.
Oh man.
I definitely agree with the idea that like we don't just need to mimic traditional sports or T-sports. I mean, quite frankly, I feel like we've gotten ourselves into a pretty big mess by trying to do that for the last 5 or 6 years.
Okay,
so
but like,
we can do other stuff.
What happens? What happens if like we inducted Crown into a Hall of Fame like season 7 or like season 8?
Oh, so wait, you're worried that Faker's gonna fall off so far?
No. I'm using a different example, like not for Faker specifically.
He's saying that like someone who pops off in the short term suddenly gets rewarded, and then they don't actually have the career longevity or these sorts of things. I think that's why my perspective is. I would rather build the criteria around like a faker, but then like you can still make it pretty ridiculous when you look at fakers. Like how many people can honestly stand next to faker? I think actually it's 0. So you can make some pretty exclusionary, rules.
I could give a hot take that if Faker gets inducted in now, I think that they need to also induct Xiaohu now.
Well, so that's the question: is like how many people are they inducting at a time?
Yeah,
because I think your concern, Cubby, is not going to be that like if they're inducting like 2 people at a time, 3 people at a time, 1 person at a time, like you're not going to get to a place ever where you are. Like, oh, this person's only been playing for 3 years. We gotta shove them in there, right? Because there's just gonna be like a queue. Like we could create the queue if we had more time on the show right now. Of like, okay, you start with this person, then you go to these people. Like you just like you work through it over the years, and I think that's what would stop somebody who's only played for 3 years from entering into it. And like the only way in which maybe they do at that point in time is if it's just like, wow, this player has not lost a game in his career or like a finals in his career or something, and has gone to every international thing and won MSI and Worlds for so long, and Saudi Arabia Cup. Like you just do that for long enough that like that's how it works. But I think there's a big enough queue that it won't be an issue.
I'm going to find it interesting because like Papa Smithy in the chat's hinting at, like for a player like Carrier, like when is he eligible? Like if you look at Carrier's career, it like arguably could already be a Hall of Fame career, right? But that's how like how are we gonna have like you have to like be playing League for like 7 or 10 years? Like how like
that's literally the same problem you have with you have to be retired for 10 years. Like it's all arbitrary. This whole practice is arbitrary. So just pick the rules that like make the coolest thing. Is my perspective. Like I don't care if Michael Jordan had to wait. All right. That doesn't make a good compelling case for why Faker should have to wait, just because in other sports and other situations where they had existing systems, MJ had to participate to that system. Like, we're creating our own here. What's the coolest thing we can possibly do should be the question we're asking, not what did other systems do, in my perspective.
I think the coolest thing to possibly do is have Faker be the only active player ever inducted into the Hall of Fame. That will enshrine him forever as the GOAT. And everyone else has to wait until at least 2 years after they're retired.
Like, what is the GDP of Faker, at this point? Like, as a serious, like, of course this guy like should stand alone. Like, I'm totally fine. I know I just make an exception for him. I don't care. He's the first, like, he's first ballot in like the biggest sense of the word. Like,
what I would actually also do with Faker, like I think that like obviously like Faker is outside the rules, for like a lot of this, right? Because like I think that like I stand by like Xiaohu should be inducted tomorrow. Like if you're gonna induct Faker tomorrow, like Xiaohu already has had the career to be inducted along with him. It's not Faker's career, but Xiaohu is a Hall of Famer, no doubt. I think the way to forever enshrine Faker in this game is make an MVP for World's Trophy and just name it after Faker. Because like everyone grew up in this game saying like, "Oh, I'm Faker. Like I wanted to be Faker. Like I made a Faker."
The Lombardi
player, right?
Trophy, the Faker Trophy.
Yes, World's MVP as the individual should be like named after Faker. I think that's the coolest way actually to enshrine Faker.
That's cool. Hey, Murderino, thank you so much for the call.
Do you do that while he's still active? Faker wins the Faker Trophy,
yes.
Or
you might have to wait for that
trophy.
one. No, do it. I for the meme potential, do it.
So
break
funny,
the internet.
Dude.
It's
a
internet.
statue of Faker like built into the trophy, and it goes to his teammate.
It's the Obama meme of him putting the award around himself or whatever. Murderino, thank you for the call. You span us off on an entire tangent about what the Hall of Legends should be, but anything that you want to shout out here at the end?
No, that was great. Shout out to Team Liquid, Liquid Plus. Join the Liquid Plus Discord.
Wow, what a shill. Respect.
Right? I'm such a shill. I'll take those Liquid Plus points all day.
Wow.
And a big shout out to my wife who put our 5-month-old daughter down so that I could jump on the show. So a big shout out to her.
Nice.
That's a nice show.
What have you spent your Liquid points on before?
I have a bunch of free Liquid merch. I have a Captain America shield with a Team Liquid crest on it. I have some cool stuff.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, hey, thank you so much for the call, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you to some more folks who have subbed. We got Shade Rubino, the Dixie Cup, Duff Alex, Schmutz Fanger, PP Doc, Finance Consultant, Mr. Dr. Enchiladas, Lasagna for One, Steve Wisey, hi Steve, and Markingtons. I think actually, we'll take a quick break right now to talk a little bit about Alienware, our sponsor for the episode. I know I talked last week about the Alienware M16, but I got to do it again because this thing is amazing. They revamped the M16 now in the M16 R2, and it is fantastic. It supports up to an NVIDIA RTX 4070 GPU and has a QHD plus 240 Hz display with G-Sync for a beautiful gaming experience. This thing is just super cool. It's got new Cryotech thermal design for more efficient cooling. It's 15% smaller than its predecessor. And it also has a stealth mode, which allows you to turn off RGB lighting and turn performance to quiet mode for more chill environments with a simple keyboard command. So I just got to tell you guys, you got to go check this thing out. If you're in the market for a notebook, a gaming notebook, this is brand new. It just got announced, I think, last week, the week before? Yeah, last week. And it's available now over at alienware.com/Travis. Check it out. Take a look at it. Maybe you're traveling soon. Maybe you've got to go to school, do some cool stuff along the way. And this thing is just for you. Yep, it's available right now, at least in the U.S., starting at $1649.99. Again, that comes with a RTX 40 series card, 16 gigs of RAM, and that beautiful QHD 2560 by 1600 240 hertz display. You know, whenever I in the past I've looked at notebooks or whatever, it's really difficult sometimes because maybe in the past you've had to choose between something that's a higher resolution display or something that's a higher refresh rate. And for me as a creator, I think it's tough where you want to choose the higher resolution, but then you're like, but I want like that high refresh for the gaming stuff. And yeah, this thing has both. So go check it out, alienware.com/Travis. Again, that's the Alienware M16 R2 gaming laptop. It's available now. Thank you to Alienware for sponsoring the show. Okay, cool. I also want to give a shout out while Cubby goes off to grab the next caller to some folks on YouTube. Shady Ghost, thank you for being a member or becoming a member. Remixed, thank you for becoming a member. And then Evan, thank you for the $5 over there. Thank you to those on YouTube that are supporting. I know that platform does not promote supporting as much as it could. I saw somebody talking earlier about how sometimes it's a little annoying to figure it out on there. So thank you to everybody on YouTube. Twitch is just primarily, this thing is just like so much better at pushing monetization and revenue, and so that's probably always going to be my primary platform for something like this, but I really appreciate the support on YouTube as well. Speaking of on YouTube, actually, we'll talk about that in a second because our next caller is here. Caller, what's your name and where are you calling from?
What's up? I'm Wizery. I'm coming from Fairfield, California, near San Francisco.
Is that Wizardry? Wizardry?
Wizery is fine.
Wizery, okay.
Yeah.
Calling from California. What do you want to talk about on the show?
I watched your wonderful video on the Travis Gafford YouTube channel, and I called to ask Mark. Earlier in that video, you talked about how what you want the league to be, like most competitive, innovative, yada yada. What were past examples of LCS content that either you were a part of or the league did years ago that you think just missed the mark or sort of represent what you want the league to be, since it's your product?
Yeah, Mark, shit on previous content that you've done.
Well, no, he's saying raise up previous content that
or highlight the good ones.
He said missed the mark as well.
Oh, maybe I misunderstood. I thought you were saying like things that could have been good that just
have been good or on your vision.
Well, I should say first off that I don't think my role is necessarily to like craft specific content. You know, maybe I'll lean in a little bit more in the short term, but like we have a lot of really talented people who have plenty of ideas themselves. Like, you know, the talent between Jet, Emily, and Raz will kick up plenty of ideas. There's producers, there's tons of people. I don't think there's going to be any shortage of ideas, and I think the best thing I can do is like more directionally say these are the sorts of things we're interested in. But even that, I'm actually pretty flexible on for any specific idea. You know, I have things that I think we are more interested in pursuing, like, you know, with the live pass change being like, okay, historically we don't have tons of gameplay actually on our YouTube channel, and I would say that I think we should maybe up the amount of gameplay we see on the channel, and that's like a direction rather than like, okay, now I'm going to go in there and build 3 series of gameplay. You know, like I think that's kind of the role I'll be more in. But even then, like if people have different opinions or we get the data back on those videos and they're performing, whatever, yada yada yada. It's a roundabout way of saying like you're more asking probably what I personally would enjoy seeing. I think people sometimes get confused where like I make catching up with Double Lift, and that is not what I think the like brand of the LCS should be or anything like that. That is like my own in joke to myself as someone who likes surrealist comedy, but I understand that is like a divisive piece of content and not at all something that we should orient around. So I also think that like I don't really, I'm not say it's like without it maybe coming across poorly, I don't think we should be looking into the past too much. I think there's probably some things like lessons and learnings and things that did well that maybe you could bring back but should be updated or modernized. Perhaps that's like a way to put it, but I don't think it's like, oh, well, this was like really good, so let's just do that again, but now in 2024 instead of in 2018 or something. You know, it's 6 years later. As painful as that is for me to say, it's 6 years later.
Bring back LCS Big Plays.
LCS Big Plays? Sure, maybe.
I actually really like what LCK does with that, where they do have a longer break screen, but they recycle that video throughout all their break screens for the whole week. Which I always find really nice. Like they do it edited with like League Director, like they show like all the abilities, like the clicks that pop up, so it's like really nice. I know it's pretty heavy editing. Exactly, but it's evergreen, Mark. You can use it for 2 days of broadcast.
Yeah. I know. I get the point. I think it's true that I think one thing we want to be more conscious of this split is matching like where the content lives with like what the content is. So I think there's a lot of things that I think could do well in social, in vertical video format that maybe is not quite as resonant in like a long form video for YouTube or something,
Okay.
Or there's content that should live in the broadcast only because it's really informative to the audience about a player's story. And because, we're guaranteed to have, we don't know what our AMA is going to be, but like whatever our AMA is, it's like, it's guaranteed to hit that many people. Whereas on YouTube, you need to be a lot more algorithmically focused. And it's like a little bit harder to just tell a player story on YouTube. Like these are the sorts of considerations I think we'll be having a lot more of this year.
Sorry, go. My bad.
No, that's it. I was just gonna
okay.
put a button in it.
I was gonna say like off of that, like obviously YouTube algorithm, like if you make YouTube shorts, it helps you get into pretty much a different algorithm, which like boosts each other. And also TikTok is something that I know that the LCS has, but I don't know if they've like super effectively used yet. So you said vertical video format, like is that something that you're kind of pushing for, like more 1 minute short form stuff that like people can hopefully more easily digest the Zoomers?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I think
okay.
So one thing too is making sure that the people who work on these specific projects actually enjoy that and want to be doing that stuff. So we have people who are interested in vertical video formats for the LCS. Historically, it might have been hard for them to find time with pros to get them between all the other things that they have. But now, if we have this no analyst desk segment time and the pros don't really have that many mandatory obligations from the broadcast when they finish, ideally it'll be easier for these people to find time with the pros to then make that kind of vertical video, since we're all in studio and we're all there every Saturday, Sunday. So that is one of the like other benefit. Like we haven't talked about too much about all the benefits of the reduced transition time that I think exists, that we don't want to oversell what the benefits will be until we're confident we can actually do them. But it's these sorts of things that are like a nice combo effect where with the studio space opened up now, to not have to just be the analyst desk, like what else can we do with pros while they're in the studio? What else can we do with these content teams now that they're not making a 6-minute segment after every single game that they need to like fill with content? Like what can we do?
Are you gonna like require teams to be there for longer or before just their gameplay for content then as well? Or like I assume you're gonna like lap that into like what an LCS day is like for at least like ops if you're a team?
For sure.
Okay.
That's something that we've like sort of communicated, and it's something that we don't want to. A lot of this is experimental, and I saw I got memed in Travis's video for saying evaluate so much, but I'm going to say it again. A lot of this is kind of evaluating what is working and what's not, and staying nimble and tweaking as we go. We have ideas, we have plans, we have things that like bets that we're making, but should these bets not be paying off, we'll look for where to pivot. A good example of something that we just don't know, but we're conscious of, is what is the on-site fan experience with this new change? It's something that I don't think a ton of people have considered, but historically, when you have 15 minutes between the end of a game and the start of a game, it's very easy as a fan to go to the bathroom, grab your picture with a pro, if that team's out there or something. But now it's like 6 minutes. And what are fans going to prioritize in the studio? Are they going to go back to their seats to catch the draft? Or are they maybe going to skip the draft in studio to get pictures with pros? Like we're kind of going to wait and see what fans are leaning on, and like what can we do to like enhance the experience that they're most interested in. These sorts of things we don't have clear answers on yet because we haven't done it. So we have thoughts, but we don't know for sure. So an example, being, we kind of want to hold pros longer and to shoot a little bit more.
That'd be great.
hopefully use them a little less on their off days is kind of like the idea is like, hey, if you stick around an extra hour here, as well as the fact that because the day is so much faster with only 4 games and reduced transition time, like it's very possible that we're finishing our day at 3:30. And I think it's a lot less of an ask than to be like, hey, stick around till 4:30. Yeah. So there's a number of these things which we are evaluating.
Yeah, I know from like a team ops perspective too. Like, so Arnold, who is with Gen G, like heads things up there. I believe is CEO. I remember like he's had a lot of posts about like LCK and like just stuff like leagues can do to get more fans in general. And one of them that I felt like was really interesting is actually having teams come together to turn one of the scrim days into a media day. So like everyone would just film content there. I actually like the idea of like folding that into a competitive day. I feel like it's a lot easier to onboard teams to that than actually giving up a day of practice, because obviously teams want to find whatever advantage they can. So yeah, I like that idea.
100%. One of the things we've targeted with this is the fact that there's very little cross-team content that exists, or cross-org content, I guess we should say, that exists in the LCS in recent years. It's really hard to get a TSM, or what would have been a TSM player and a Cloud9 player and a CLG player in that era to all sit down together and shoot content, because their days are so spread out. And if they win or lose, plus they have all these other obligations, I think it's a lot easier in a situation like this to end up with 3 or 4 different teams in a piece of content together all at the same time without needing to like break up when you're shooting that. So these are all things that are on the table. Again, we don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. So like we haven't said too much about this kind of stuff, but it's all things that went into this decision. It's not just about reducing the transition time on broadcast. It has what we think will be very beneficial knock-on effects.
That's good. I also know like from like a player or like a team perspective, like comp days are actually the hardest days on the teams, because like taking the team ride like to the studio, you play your warm-up games, then you go on stage, then you say hey to fans, like then you go home, and like then the pros kind of like have breakdown and prep for the next day. Like I actually, like some fans may be like, I feel like it's a lot easier to convince teams to stick around on those days and like actually use the space in the schedule more than it is to have them come in on a different day, like where they aren't supposed to go into the studio anyway. So yeah, I actually, it's really good.
And it's something, again, that like we're not hard, especially in the early days, we have so much more stuff about like the workflows and these sorts of things that we're like let's figure out exactly what's the best day to shoot content on with these pros once we know for sure that the workflows on the transition times are hammered out, and like there's like priority lists that we want to get through. So this one is not like the highest priority, but it's things that we definitely want to get to at some point.
I think one of the things that I really appreciate about what you've been saying, Mark, is that in my time working for companies love to build a plan and then just be like, this is our plan for this year, and this is how we're going to execute it, and this is what's going on, and all this stuff. One of the reasons why I think, one of the things that Mark and I have talked about a lot on the show and elsewhere, is how often you see these like big companies like Blizzard kind of fall to a Larian Studios, because Larian, who made Baldur's Gate, because you just, I think as things get more corporate, more rigid, more, structured, you just can't move as quickly and change things as much as you want. You're not as free. There's so many things that are decided by corporations and stuff, or not corporations, committees. All this to say that I'm excited to hear that the LCS is willing to be nimble and fast, and that you guys are not hard committing to specific things right now. Obviously, like hard commit to the live patch or whatever, but not like, and this is how all of our content will be. We need to do these exact same things, these types of, like, one show that's this, one show that's this, one show that's this. When I was at Yahoo and at CBS Interactive, they love to talk about buckets. What are our 3 main buckets that all the content is going into? You're laughing, Covey, because you've probably heard this before, right?
Yeah, I was digital marketer before, so yeah.
Yeah, and
content buckets. Yeah.
What are these buckets standing for and stuff? And I think oftentimes trying to put so much struggle in, or structure in, kind of makes creativity struggle. Is what I meant to say. So I don't know. I'm excited to hear how much you guys are looking to flex, because I think the LCS is not in a situation I feel where it can be like, well, guys, we'll try this for this year, and if it doesn't work, then I guess in January of next year we'll try another thing. It's got to be something where things are changing on a week-to-week basis, a month-to-month basis, and ultimately a split-to-split basis. So that's cool. All right.
Yep.
Wizery, anything you want to add to anything we've said here?
No.
Okay.
I mean, so you answered.
Out?
Yeah, because you answered. I guess I do have an add-on. You answered my question because you said you're talking about how much more stuff you want to do with the teams, like have them interact together, and that is something like a direction you want to take. Like they interact more, the teams interact more, like on screen, and we the fans get to see that.
Yeah. Well, hey, I appreciate that. Anything that you want to shout out here?
Shout out TGI Industries, amazing. Alienware, you're amazing. Fuck, I had it. What else? That'll just be it. Thank you very much for having me. I've been a long time fan. That's what I was gonna do. Mark, I have a Yu-Gi-Oh card signed from you from 2018 Summer Finals. I can't wait for when y'all come back to West Coast. Just very happy from that.
Damn.
2018 Summer Finals was...
What Yu-Gi-Oh card was it? Was it Pot of Greed?
Oakland?
No, it was Oakland when Cloud9 got absolutely destroyed by Doublelift and Impact. It was a sad day. But yeah, it was 2018 Oakland.
Yeah. Very good. Well, hey, thank you so much for the call, and we'll catch you next time.
Go Alienware.
All right. Off Cubby goes to grab the next caller.
Mark, how's it felt not having to do anything tonight? How have your breaks been?
It's been much more enjoyable. I just don't interact with Travis, and I just stare at the wall.
All right, you guys can talk.
I can get used to this. Yeah.
It's also what happens when Mark comes over to hang out with me. I'll be like, Mark, you have to come to White Elephant, and he just won't interact with me, and he'll stare at a wall. It's kind of strange.
You know my complaints about your White Elephant?
Wait, that we don't do joke gifts?
Yeah, they have to be serious, dude.
The world has too much waste in it to waste money and resources on joke gifts.
We don't like joke gifts?
Gil is here. Gil, where are you calling from?
Hey, good evening, guys. I'm calling from Grand Rapids, Michigan.
From where, Michigan? Ooh. Sorry, you are really quiet. I'm turning up. Also, if you can get a little closer to your microphone, that would be great.
I apologize. I'm getting closer. Good. I'm calling from Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Grand Rapids, Michigan. All right, yes, and what do you want to talk about?
So I got a question for Mark. How has your experience as a caster, host, been like with the transition to an LCS commissioner?
I guess I'd say it's not. It depends what you're asking exactly. Because if you're saying like, how has it helped me, I can go on that. But if you're saying like, how does it directly relate, it's not very like.
Personally, how has it helped you? The second part will be how has it not helped, but we'll get there.
Well, I think there's a lot of things. It's hard to boil down. Obviously, being close to the scene for a long time helps. Having working relationships with a number of people already at Riot and being able to kind of know them, even if I didn't know exactly how Riot as an org operated prior to joining properly, I at least knew a lot of these people on a personal level, and they're easy to talk to because of that. I'm more forward facing than a lot of, I think, commissioners and people in the past would be, partially due to feeling comfortable on camera. I don't think it's fair to judge someone who signed up to be a commissioner of somewhere else and they don't want to be like doing videos and content, all this stuff. Like that's something that, the team is leaning on, like including me and things like that. So there's a number of those sorts of things that it's being utilized. My previous work experience, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I mean, is there a temptation, Mark, to... I guess you based off what you were saying earlier, it sounds like you're trying to kind of avoid being too involved in the broadcast. Like, not just even on screen. I mean, like, literally in creative meetings or coming up with content or anything like that. It seems like you're intentionally walking away from that.
I've told you, I've complained that you keep bugging me to do things with you, Come do an interview. Come do Hotline League. Ugh.
Yeah, I know that as you've been there for 3 weeks, so the Riot desire to avoid doing any content with third parties and to be lacking in transparency, to just throw something up on lolesports.com and a shitty part of the website you can't find, and also maybe throw a video out there and then refuse to elaborate. I know that's starting to set in, Mark, but I really do think it's going to be important for you to do content like this show sometimes.
Yes, sometimes. I did one, a month ago? You need a second one already? You're hurting for content that bad? No, I mean, obviously, I intend to always be like communicative with the audience, and I always want to keep that portion up. I think with regards to just like comedic content or like these sorts of things, I don't think I really want to be overly utilized. And you're right. Like, I definitely want to start pulling back now that the season's starting. Like, it's not about me, like it's really not. It's about the pros and the teams and the league and all these sorts of things. So like, I'm happy to be utilized whenever people think it makes sense. But yeah, I'm not trying to do any of that stuff. And also, like I said before, there's tons of creative people who are making content every single week, and it's not just my vision. It's other people too that have really good ideas that we want to figure out how we can empower them to go and make those cool ideas. So yeah.
I don't know, Cubby, if you have any follow-ups on this as talent who also cares a lot about their league.
I obviously, like, this might be something that you can't share, but like, I always like to talk about like being in the weeds. Like, Mark is definitely someone that was in the weeds. But like, from being in the weeds, like now getting to this job, is there anything that you thought was true as a caster that you find like very different or have a very different perspective on now? Or like, is there anything that like you have a greater appreciation for that like maybe you didn't appreciate as a caster?
Yes, but I think the reason I didn't have insight into those before are the same reason I won't tell you now on Hotline League or anything.
All right.
Yes.
Well,
wait, but what is like?
Okay,
give us a vague example. That's so vague. Like, what are into budgeting or something or what?
Yeah, stuff like that, like org chart, budgeting, like these sorts of things that like are not really need to know information for a freelance talent to know before, and not also super relevant to the audience listening. I'm sure everyone would enjoy learning it, but again, it's not necessarily need to know or something that should be
Mark, please go over the entire org chart.
Yeah, you want to go org chart, budgeting.
Actually, here's an
onboarding process.
Here's an interesting thing. I've seen this pop up a lot in comments and social media and stuff. I have no idea where it's coming from, but there's a lot of people who say that you actually can't do anything. You have no power. You are a figurehead, and you can't actually impact anything, right? Like the commissioner actually doesn't do anything there, or can't change anything or impact anything. So what would you say to people who have that opinion, or whenever those comments pop up on Reddit and social media and elsewhere?
Keep watching. That's what I'd say.
Wait, that's like such a cop out, right? Like,
is it?
I guess,
or
like,
is it a confidence? I don't know. You tell me.
Well, like, whenever we see, I know you want to give a lot of credit to the people that you work with, and I think I've seen you do this a lot on this show, even in our private conversations. I think what is maybe relevant to people who are listening and who are curious about like what you can actually do, I think is the idea of, what have we seen so far that was like a Mark idea? Like, what have you been able to change, even if it was with the help of really talented people who are also eager around you?
Well, I think a handful of the big changes, I guess you could say I was the primary driver behind. Yeah, like I said, a lot of these things have existed before. People have talked about them. There's like, I would say, like, I don't deserve very much credit at all for weekends, other than being like another voice last year who thought we should go back to weekends, but as talent. But like, that's pretty worthless. Like, it wasn't like I was in the meeting rooms or designing the schedules or any of that sort of stuff. I have had some influence over the actual schedule, trying to balance out all the variables that are at play, and resources and those sorts of things. Like, I don't know. There's a lot of things that like you touch and influence, and then people go out and like build them. Like, our comp ops teams are the ones really designing the workflows with engineering and broadcast on how exactly the transition time thing's going to happen. Fortunately, because I have a bit of a background in the competition side and a bit of a background on the broadcast side, I'm able to like hold my own in those meetings and know what everyone's talking about more or less. But at one point, someone was referencing some tech, and I was like, I've never heard this term before. I have no fucking clue what this is. You tell me if this is possible or not, you know, like, and that's kind of where the conversation goes from there. So, you know, like, I don't know.
Well, you mentioned the weekend thing, but like, was live patch stuff a Mark Zimmerman idea that you decided to change and then got people on board with, or what?
Yes, I'll just okay. It's awkward. I'll be honest. It's awkward to say yes to something that also involved like a ton of people getting it done. Directionally, yeah, I pushed very hard for live patch. I pushed very hard for the transition time changes.
Yeah,
I guess you could say like it's nice as the product lead to say our product wants to do this.
Yes. I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable, and I understand that you are trying to help make sure that other people don't feel like you're just hogging the spotlight. But I do think that it is relevant to people to understand how much power you have, right? Because I think people are betting on you as fans, like, hey, Mark's going to fix this, you know? And like, not even just fans, like, I ran into somebody who works at LCS when I was getting my haircut today, and this person was talking about how excited they are for the new year and how they just feel like it was so good that you got the job. And so as the stuff is getting hyped up, you also have speculation on like, well, what can Mark even actually do? And so I think that's why this question is like, it pops up, right? Is because people want to know, all right, we have faith in this guy, but also what are his capabilities in terms of, or not even his capabilities, but his areas of influence. Like where can he make things happen? Where can't? So, but I understand the balance you're trying to strike in not being like, hey, thanks, I made all of this happen.
I thought that would be a lie if I said that. if I said I made all this happen, that's a lie.
Would it also be a lie to say you can't do anything?
Yeah, that would also be a lie. That's why I said just watch. If you like the changes, sick. If you don't, and we'll continue working on them. There's going to be times like I think I've said a lot about we want to be fan focused, fan first, whatever you want to call it, and that's absolutely true. But there's going to be times where the fans are not going to get what they want at some point, or there's going to be a controversy. Like how many years of the LCS has gone by without controversies or problems? Like 0, probably, and that's going to be the case again. And I don't want people to think just because like that the fan doesn't get what they want that we're not acknowledging that or aware of that, or like, oh, that wasn't a Mark choice, or that wasn't a Mark, like I don't want people to be trying to like weed out each specific instance of what was or what wasn't under my control or anything like that.
I mean, that's what you get paid for, the 50 mil in the private jet to get up in front of the controversy and say, guys, this isn't on us, right? That's this, yeah.
Yeah, I get up there to dodge the bullet like Neo, and I wanted bend the bullet to some other target. That's what they pay me for. No, I mean, if there's, there'll be times, and I'll go up there, and there'll be some bad news, and people will be upset at me, and that's going to be fine. I'm not worried about it. Like that's going to happen at some point this year.
Yeah. All right, Gil. I know we've gone way off of your topic, but anything you want to add here at the end?
No worries. I just wanted to ask Mark at the very end, after his legendary cover of Silver Scrapes, does he plan to ever do another cover?
Another cover after Silver Scrapes, for those that can't hear.
Do you mean like a new song or just perform it again?
I mean, if you would love to perform it again, I think everybody would love to hear that again.
I wouldn't.
When NA is in the World Finals, I'll fly out to whatever venue that's in.
And sing the national anthem?
No.
I can live with that.
Besides, half of our pros are going to be Canadian if we're ever in the World Finals. Like
you can do that anthem. The Canadians care way less about that than the U.S. people care about the national anthem.
Mark, you think half of our pros are going to be Canadian? If we're ever in the World Finals, it'll be Steve, and it's because he'll have finally figured out a way to have 5 non-North American players on his team.
Yeah, we don't talk about that, Travis.
All right. Good point. Gil, anything you want to shout out?
I want to give a big shout out to Cubby. I think he's an amazing new host to the show. as a longtime listener, I'm so glad to have him a part of the crew.
Oh,
awesome.
Thanks,
man. Yeah, that's nice to hear that. Yeah. Hey, thanks so much, Gil, for the call, and we'll catch you next time.
Have a great night, guys.
Awesome. All right, we got 3 callers left. We'll speed it up a little bit so that Mark can get out of here maybe a little early.
All right. Here we go.
Okay.
Wait, hold on. I actually have to go up there before I drag them in. We almost got out of the order of operations there.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
You're good. I know you're still learning.
Oh yeah. No,
I skip around all the time for what it's worth. Back when I did it, if I forgot people's takes, or I realized I pulled 2 takes that are really similar, I'd GM another one in between them or something. Yeah.
Nice.
You can,
I like that.
Yeah.
You can make people wait. Raz, thank you for rating us with 26 viewers. Mr. Big Nonsense, thank you for gifting a sub, and also thank you for subbing. Dark Tarkanis, thank you, and Not Even Stevens, thank you as well. Large Power, thanks. Thank you to everybody for the subs. All right. I think we are almost here with our caller. Mark, you watched anything good recently?
I hear the plings from Discord, so I'm not going to answer that question.
All right. Our caller is here. Caller, what's your name and where are you from?
My name is Beans, calling from Pennsylvania.
Beans from Pennsylvania. What do you want to talk about on the show?
My take is that Riot banning all live coverage of the NACL Open qualifiers is disrespectful to all parties involved in the production, including players, casters, producers, and anyone else who wanted to watch the games live. As an assistant team manager for one of the competing teams, it feels really disappointing that friends of mine who wanted to see my team play live and others can no longer do so.
Can you elaborate a little bit on what this is, Beans?
Yeah, so the Open qualifiers is about, I believe it's 32 teams playing to go into the NACL, and it's kind of like a relegation system. And the top teams from the qualifiers play against the bottom NACL teams after their season.
All right. And what happened in terms of banning?
So from what I understand, it overlaps with LCS in terms of like the time slot because it got moved to the weekends. So Riot decided to say teams can't overlap with LCS time slot, even if it's going to have like 5, 10, or 15 viewers, and teams can't like stream their games basically.
There are also, they aren't allowing players to stream their POV either. And like how, like for people that don't understand like how OQs work, I think Beans did a nice job of describing the system because you ultimately get to play against the bottom 2 Challenger League teams to take their spot if you are a top 4 OQ team over the 2 splits. But they made a change, which I think is good, which is to move it on weekends because it will enable more players to more easily compete. But LCS had a ruling that because LCS will be going on, they will not allow for content to be published, to my understanding, until the week. So not over the Saturday, Sunday while they're competing. They'll have to wait until LCS is over to publish any content involving OQs. So there can't be live coverage, pretty much.
Well, I like that the spiciest question and call we've had so far is about NACL, and I wonder if that has anything to do with the person picking the takes.
It got a lot of reactions in the Discord. It was like 10 of 2 different emotes. All right,
You've learned well from Mark.
That was choice.
Yeah. Hey, you pulled the people's choice topics. Go ahead.
People's choice.
It relates to me. We talked, me and Zach, about this stuff, and we went back and forth. This is something. You said there's no streaming allowed. I would, I'm technically, it's Martin Luther King Day, so I'm not going to go ping people at work or something. I don't want to commit on a live broadcast, but we can talk more about maybe some options for like family and friends watching. Like technically, you're not supposed to stream the tournament realm, but guess what? There's tons of internal scrim streams for analysts who are not there to watch and things like that. If maybe this ruling has somehow included those sorts of things, I think that would be looked at. I think there's also a feeling of like getting more eyeballs on these sorts of viewership of the NACL Open qualifiers if the LCS is on. if people would be less likely to watch those things. Was also like there's a pro and a con to each. Like, yes, if you're on weekends and it's live, that's obviously really good for people, but also if there's fans of the LCS who might be interested in this and the LCS is on, it's hard for them to watch both at the same time, and they probably wouldn't. So we were trying to take account of how the viewership would flow both ways. And I would have to check if for some reason we said like private streams wouldn't be allowed. Which I don't
private streams
know why
be
that.
allowed. Yeah.
Yeah. So with regards to friends and family, I would think that there's probably a solve there.
Whoopley is in. He's not saying anything, but I see him in the user list for Twitch.
Yeah,
chat.
well, that's why. The other thing is, tier 2 is technically his purview, so I don't want to say. I don't want to speak for him. Technically, it's also something that he and I collaborate on with anytime our products are interacting. So we'll probably talk on Tuesday, and if there's something that needs to get adjusted, it'll be adjusted or clarified or whatever. So
I mean, is this, Mark, is there, I'm trying to understand what the concern here is, because like I have a hard time imagining that, like, and I mean no disrespect to our caller and the NACL open qualifiers, but I have a hard time imagining that like this would be even a blip of an impact on the LCS viewership. Like, we're talking about like a fraction of a percentage.
Oh, you're right.
point.
You can say that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think. Oh, sorry.
I don't know if it's like precedent setting concerns or Mark also now messing with his cat or so.
No, this got stuck in my chair. Sorry, no, I'm listening. That's the power of the Bluetooth headset, that I can do two things at once.
No, it's just fun. It was just funny because I'm like, well, I have to now ask Mark a pretty tough question. I look over and you're in your old lady Valentine's blanket, like hunched over, trying to wrestle something out. It's just very funny.
So I will say that, like, on this topic, I did link a community tweet that had a screenshot of the announcement made in the Discord. And the current plan right now is to have observers be able to record the VODs, so that people could use it off of like the YouTube channel, like still make content over it. It's like the big thing is that it's just live coverage. And I know that right now, like given the plan, OQs will be happening over the weekend, and it's not just an LCS thing. It's also that OQs used to be broadcasted last year on LCS_Challengers on Twitch, and the OQs would be before the Challengers League games. Now it's going to be LCS games in the Challengers games. Like the OQs just do not have a home during the day. The home would have likely be the LCS Challengers channel or other unofficial streams during the day, but they aren't going to allow unofficial streams of this either. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll admit that like this is not the thing that I know the most about with regards to the tier 2 scene. So like, I think also, like we said before, we're pretty fluid and nimble. So like, I can say like as the LCS product, my concern is not that a couple 10 to 20 view streams are going to sabotage our viewership or anything like that. That is not, as far as I'm aware, the concern. But there's probably some factors here I'm not aware of that I don't want to like put my foot in my mouth and commit to like solving this problem.
Yeah,
if there's a reason that it exists in the first place that I don't know about.
Will you look into it tomorrow?
Yeah, why not? Why wouldn't I?
I think that there is like I don't know the contract either, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of exclusivity agreement with Rally Cry, like who's covering this. It could be something like that too. So
yeah, there might be some paperwork, and maybe we can draft up an addendum. Like I don't know. Like I'll just say that there's things like this where I have to do research before I commit to something.
What do you think, caller? Are you still heated?
No, I mean I understand. It's just the thing about like the number of viewers like taking away from it. Like in the official Riot announcement, it says like, given the number of changes, the LCS implementing the split, we want to ensure that we get the best data possible around the LCS changes and minimize variables that could affect it. So the minus 20 viewers is kind of a bit of a strange way of
okay, so
it.
Zach threw Mark under the bus is what happened here.
No, it's just the
NACL
official...
was like, yeah, it's those fuckers at LCS. Like, they're screwing us over.
The official announcement is kind of coming off like we don't want to impact the data in any way. So the 20 people that aren't going to watch it anymore is just a weird way of going about it, I guess.
Yeah. Hey, at least 50. All right, let's give tier 3 some credit here.
Well,
right?
True.
For the big games.
I mean, I don't know. Like, again, I know we're memeing about the viewership here, but like there are some decent sized streamers who get viewership. You know, like I don't know if Viper, like what he's up to. He's on I know an academy team or a NACL team. I don't know if they're playing the open qualifiers and if he's streaming and we allow that to 1,000 people. That seems kind of weird. So like I don't know like what the projected viewership of these things were. I'm sure I would assume that exists, you know, maybe someone maybe, like we're memeing the 20 person like, you know, young kid in college turning his stream on, but like there are also legitimately decent sized creators in tier 2 that we would I don't know. Like this is something that again I'm just not super confident on. So like I don't want to just meme 50 viewers when there's other legitimate ones that maybe would be.
Well, we've raked you over the coals enough on this. I feel like we're not gonna. It sounds like you got to look into it tomorrow, and hopefully we'll get some sort of follow up.
Whatever.
But Beans, thank you so much for the call. Anything you want to shout out before you go?
Yeah, shout out Cubby for supporting Tier 2 and Tier 3 for such a long time. And shout out my NACL OQ team, Team Fish Taco.
Yeah, good luck to Split.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the call, and we'll catch you next time.
Have a good one.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. All right. So you want to go grab the next one, Cubby?
Yes, I fire away.
Gotcha. Okay, we have. Oh no, nobody else for me to shout out on the sub or YouTube front. So I'll just mention that you can become a member of the YouTube channel for as little as $2.99. Doing so allows you to see new content before it's released. So I would go check that out. You could have actually watched my video to Mark or my interview with him the night before those things went live. Actually, the interview was 2 days before. So it's just a great way to support the channel over on YouTube. And if you do become that, it also, if you're watching live there, it helps you. It gives you like some icons and stuff. Over on Twitch, you can hover your cursor over the screen to find a button that will allow you to send a Prime sub. If you want to sub to the channel for free with Prime, that would be swell as well. Doing so supports the content, and I'm going to need a lot of support this year to not be in a rough spot. But I appreciate whatever support you all give me. It's fine. Thank you for this week. We got another caller here. Caller, what's your name and where are you from?
Hello, it's Ezekiel from the sewers of Minnesota.
Ezekiel from the sewers of Minnesota. What do you want to talk about on the show?
I think this is the take that he brought me in for. Mark, I called in, I think it was like 2 or 3 times ago, and Mark expressed interest in the idea of having more EU versus NA games throughout the year for a whole bunch of reasons. And I'm wondering is, 1, is that still a possibility? And 2, also possibly versus South America, because they have very invested fans.
Sorry, I was being a keyboard warrior a little bit. Something about EU versus NA, more matches. What was the
question was can we get more? You said you called in previously with this take, right, caller?
Yeah, and we talked about this before. It was just after Worlds.
Okay, so after Worlds, and you said you liked the idea of more NA and EU matches, and maybe even matches against South America, yes?
Yeah. Mark at that time had expressed that he liked that idea, and so I'm wondering, 1, is that still a thing that he likes, and 2, is that something possible for this year?
Now, as a commissioner, he fucking hates the idea. It's terrible. No, what do you think, Mark?
No, I think I still think that more cross-regional play is fun and interesting. I think the Golden Guardians versus BDS match was, even though terrible for us, was a lot of fun. I would still want to find ways to make that happen. Anytime you have cross-region play, obviously it exponentially increases the amount of variables you need to juggle to make anything like that happen, regardless of schedule and budget. And what are the teams doing? Is that their off week, and now you're just making them play some match? How does it tie into the broader importance of each split? If it doesn't, then maybe people troll. We had Battle of the Atlantics before, which were just kind of dropped in the middle of a split that people didn't care about. And like that was a can of worms. So like, if you're going to do this, you have to do it correctly. And that, like I said, is pretty difficult. I think conceptually and philosophically, I like the idea. But who knows, how hard that is to actually pull off. Well, I should say who knows. It is very hard to pull off.
Okay, so is that it's so hard that like this year do not expect that?
Yep.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I would say don't expect that. I don't want to set any false expectations. I think it would be much more of a 2025 solve, if at all.
But and this is an area where it's hard for you to make this decision for the LCS,
yes,
Mark, because you now have to get into the global world.
Yeah, and even in a world where like the LEC and us align, we have to make sure that the global is fine with it, that we're not stepping on like the toes of other things, that our teams would be interested, that each group's partners would be like, oh yeah, I'd love to sign up for a best of whatever tournament in December when I'm trying to build my team, or like, no, I don't want it after MSI because my guys are recovering. Like there's just a lot of reasons that something like this can die, and like that's the reason a lot of ideas die, is because you just need like one party to not sign off on it when you're trying to get buy-in from like 5 or 6 different groups of people.
Yeah. Hey, thanks so much, caller, for the take. Anything that you want to shout out before we go on to our final caller?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for all the callers that are roasting MarkZ. He deserves it, and I appreciate everyone.
Agreed. I agree. That's a great shout out. Thank you for the call. All right. He does deserve it. Covey, you want to grab the last caller?
Yep.
All right. Thank you to Whoopsie Daisies for the sub and Poggies Woggies for the sub. And then thank you over on YouTube. We had Dustin Endo drop a membership and King Manchi with the 5 gifted. Thank you very much. And Ezreal Auditore, thank you for the Prime as well. I'm after this, please stick around on Twitch because I'm going to do a quick bounty that'll take about 2 minutes, and then afterwards we will do some chill sort of like pack opening stuff for the people that are down to stick around for that. We've got our next caller here. Caller, what do you want to talk about on the show? And and what's your name and where are you from?
Well, my name is Urdiales. I'm calling from Monterrey, Mexico. And my call is about LCS fans should start harping about international success and should focus more on having a healthier ecosystem, like better player retention, team fandom, and just making the players feel welcome in the league.
You're saying the fans should be better about this?
Yeah, that's what I think.
All right. Do you want to elaborate on this? Why do you feel like they need to do this?
Well, first of all, I want to make a little bit more of a point on the international success. I think a lot of people are very focused on that, and that does, in my experience, that doesn't necessarily mean much. My experience is that, for example, Mexico goes to the World Cup in soccer every year, and the fandom on soccer on this country is nuts. So. And we get knocked out like pretty fast. And each year we have hope and we continue like having fandom. But I feel like there's a lot of people that have this expectation that we should beat LEC at least, and if not, it's a total failure. And I think that the expectation on last Worlds was quite like adequate. To say it somehow, and Energy beat G2 and it's been celebrated like the win that it is, and I think it should continue that way. And the other side is just like being more welcome for players so that they don't boomerang away, like Quid, for example, that I think he's getting a lot of criticism.
Yeah, so it's funny. I see a lot of people saying that this is like a paid caller from my end, but I think it's interesting because you put this more on the fans than on the teams. Like my frustration has always been with the teams that will have intense roster instability, but you look at this more from like a fan perspective, caller.
Yeah, I think that the teams will do what they need to do to win more. if they have the TL philosophy of just signing a big name player to the roster and try to win now, I think that's in on their end. I think that makes sense. But having the fan sentiment not be welcoming. For example, I think Pioshik was a great addition, and he did receive a lot of praise when he got in. But halfway through the split, he lost a lot of he fell out of grace with the fandom. I feel like. So I think that the teams should encourage having players around longer, but I think that that's not in our power, right? What's in our power is like being more welcome to the players and make them feel welcome so that they want to stay longer. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Cubby, I know it's been Mark bouncing around for a bit. What do you think of this take?
I mean, I think expectations are fun. Like, I agree that, like, you know, NRG, I think, surpassed expectations at Worlds. Like, I think that NA's performance was more than adequate. I think that there's something reasonable to say for, like, fans have more reasonable expectations. And for me, it's like, I think that you have to build, like, from the bottom up. And, like, I've talked about this a lot, like, in terms of the league on my stream. Like, what I think about, like, what makes a successful, you know, like, League of Legends ecosystem. For me, it's like, it is having a strong, like, tier 3. Like, I think that one of the big differences that you get with players here versus players in Korea or China is, like, when they get exposed to coaching. It's a lot earlier in, like you're getting exposed to coaching at, like, the age of 13, 14, like, if you're really good in, like, some of these trainee programs. And here you may not get exposed to coaching until, like, you enter an OQ team, like, and play at that high. That's a really high level to play at, and a lot higher than, like, what a lot of kids will face over in Korea. So I do think that, like, there's something to be said, like, if you are able to do that, then, like, the odds of you having higher player retention go up because, like, there's a more solid base and, like, people are more prepared hopefully when they do hit the big stage. Like, I think something that we've really seen is you know, like, a player like Dokala or Fake God, like, they were LCS pros for a short amount of time, and then they went back through the system because, like, in that short amount of time, like, they weren't good enough. And now, like, when they're back through the system, like, Dokala just won, and I have a lot of faith in Fake God to be good in LCS this upcoming split. And I think from talking with both of them, they realized, like, hey, this is the work ethic that I need to be a pro, like, in this space, right? Not to just be good for, like, one patch, one split, or 1 year, but this is what I need to be good on any patch or any split in any year. So I do think that, like, building from the ground up, like, matters a lot. And I do think, like, fans' expectations are somewhat reasonable. I also think that expectations are fun. Like, we just hope that Team USA makes the World Cup. And there's been a lot of work that Team USA put in to, like, revamp the soccer system below that, like, has actually helped, like, Team USA start to perform better, like, on the international format, right? And then, then you can raise expectations. Because they actually took a very much, like, grassroots approach and a lot more similar to, like, what Team USA Hockey does, where they kind of keep players in a similar class. Like, they have players come in together and then they play together for a few years. Like, then they mix the team only at the end, where you get the best talent, which kind of helps build cohesion, like, how to play as a team, and everyone, you get, like, a lot closer bonds, like, in that, which is what these teams have figured out. So I do think it's interesting, and I very much believe that, like, building from the bottom up is always the way to like build stuff that can withstand anything.
I appreciate it. Mark, what do you think?
I think teams are able to do what they want. Fans should say what they want. You know, people should. I admit I was a little distracted.
Yeah, France won 0-3. They fucking suck as a country, don't you know?
What is the context of that conversation?
K-Corp, they won 0-3. You know, they're France. Come on.
No, I know that, but I meant, how's that tie to the point about teams changing players too quickly?
Oh, you were talking about expectation. You know, I want to have France shouldn't be 0-3. Come on, what is this, history?
I look forward to seeing your DM history after this episode
thank
comes
you.
out.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, Dom's done dealing with the K-Corp fans. I'm not. I'm engaging in it.
Yeah. It's funny because all the LCS people are like, man, I wish we had that. And sometimes I look at those tweets and those replies and stuff, and I'm like, I'm okay for right now. Yeah, I look your caller. Sorry, I'm I'm just a little. I think the fans will sort of lead the teams a bit, but I think teams more than anything can lead the fans, and the broadcast can lead the fans. And so I personally think, like, yes, it is great to say, hey, fans should be more welcoming, fans should be more open to this stuff, but ultimately I think the league and teams have moved away from what fans have wanted for a while, and that is why I so often put the onus there rather than on fans. But I do appreciate the sentiment, which is like we should be more welcoming, we should be more open, that type of stuff. So, thank you though for the call. Anything you want to shout out before we say goodbye?
First of all, Alienware. I've been watching this show, I think since its inception, and Alienware has been a really big part of it. So I appreciate it. Also, MarkZ. When I started watching, I thought that he was the only one making sense on the analyst desk. Not to flame anybody, but he talked to me on a personal level, and and my friends on League, tilteados.com, and have a great night.
Yeah, thank you so much for the call.
I feel so bad when I was picking up this call where I was saying Urdiales, and it's Urdiales. I get it how it's spelled.
Yeah, it's always interesting because you don't have context on what somebody's like handle is, and where they're from in the world and all that until you ask them, and so it could be tough. All right, that is the show. Please stick around on stream if you're watching live. Really would appreciate that. If you aren't watching live, please come watch live. We'd love to have you. It's twitch.tv/TravisGaffer. Just toss me a follow. That way you'll get a notification. I don't go live that often, so you won't get spammed if you have notifications on. But yeah, usually it's once to 3 times a week or so. We'd love to have you join us. 7 p.m. Pacific is when we do this on Mondays. And the next episode will be after the start of LCS, so we'll be able to call in, and that episode can be about how Mark fucked up the LCS and everything was terrible the first weekend. Cubby, what do you want to shout out, plug? What do you got for us?
Not much. Thanks, Mark, for joining us. Everyone's been saying that, Mark looks good this episode. So, if people just want to say that Cubby has nice hair, I feel like, Mark, you really upgraded your hair game on this episode. From like but usually it's kind of, everywhere. Anyway, I feel like that could be good. No, thanks for joining us. Best of luck the split, being commish. And I'll have the LCS tier list up on Travis's channel later in the week. I have a first draft waiting. And then, we'll see you guys on Challengers broadcast later in the week.
Yeah. Mark, what do you want to plug?
Plug showers. I showered after being at Huntington Beach all day.
Nice.
The Huntington Library, excuse me, whatever it's called. So yeah, that's why the hair is, I guess, not looking like it's been under a hat or like with product in it for 7 hours in a row. It's typically how it looks. But yeah, shout outs to Cubby for stepping in to Hotline League. He's done a great job, I think. Travis, you're there. That's still true. And shout out to all the fans for calling in, giving questions. My first time doing this as commissioner, so I'm sure I can get better in the future. So just looking at that kind of stuff. And otherwise, just fucking watch this Saturday at noon. 1/20, 12 p.m. PST. Do it.
And by the way, it has been a triple Mark day or triple days of Mark for my content, where we did the video to Mark, then the interview, now this. We're gonna get rid of Mark for a bit. We won't see him. I won't pester him again probably until finals, unless there's some big pressing, scandalous reason for me to try to drag him onto the show or in an interview. But you'll have to get used to not seeing him around for a bit, even though he's been around for a while. He's got a job to do. I'm gonna let him do it. But other than that, thanks, Mark, for coming on your day off. I'm sorry that we dragged you on here, but now you know what it's felt like for all of our guests that have had to come on Mondays.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, true.
All right, everyone, that's Hotline League. We'll see you all next time.